You just tell me when.
Yeah, hit the go live button and it's loading. Setting up your meeting for Facebook Live. Will it have a countdown? I don't know.
I think this will work.
Okay, I think we're live. Okay, yeah. I'm on a new service, so hopefully you guys, I don't know if I'm gonna get your comments. I don't know.
It's my fault. Blame your guests.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm figuring this out. So hi, welcome to Starlight Talks. I'm here this week with Adam Walsh, who is actually my my teacher in middle school. He's an educational therapist, so we can talk about that. We can talk about stories about middle school. Hopefully I can find a way to get your comments so I know what you guys want to talk about. As usual, hey, thank you for joining. What do we have going on this week? We have support group tomorrow. I think Lillian's running that. Game night, we have someone new in charge of game night. That's Fridays. I just filmed a video that's being edited to with a bunch of other great experts in the autism field that are going to go out to therapists. So if you're interested in any of that, if you're studying to be a therapist or a therapist want to learn about autism, I can give you that resource. There's a Facebook group, I believe, that has a bunch of these resources put together by someone I just met who's super invested in this kind of stuff, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, I just did that today, so I'm really excited about that. So let me know if you're interested in that project. Yeah, I think that's everything new. Yeah, so welcome to Starlight Talks. If you miss it, I'm here with Adam Walsh. I'm going to see if I can pull up your comments on my phone.
Would you like me perhaps to explain the problems we had?
Yeah, you
can. Chloe sent me the link, and the app only allows the streaming to occur when you sign in using Facebook. And because I'm 114 years old, I don't have a Facebook account. So we were unable to use the method, the app that Chloe usually uses for these shows. And we had to resort to a Zoom call, which I have streamed with people before, and I think it'll be successful, but it's new to both of us. So forgive Chloe, the error was mine.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the live stream on my phone, problem solving here. Yeah, thank you, Blake, for joining. Yeah, so it might say that I joined the live stream. So that's okay.
You're joining your own live stream.
Yeah.
Well, this is new. I want to also add that Chloe problem solved this in the space of 3 very rushed and probably frantic minutes. So she's a technological wizard.
I didn't know that Zoom could live stream. Google's really helpful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so yeah. Would you like to introduce who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, as Chloe said, my name is Adam Walch. I'm an educational therapist. I have been in private practice and affiliated with a number of local schools for nearly 40 years now, and worked with Chloe extensively in years past and with her sisters. Had the distinct honor of starting to work with Chloe, I believe when she was 11 years old, and pretty much through high school, certainly through middle school, and then we continued kind of sporadically through high school.
I think I was 12 because it was the middle of 7th grade that I joined.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, I was late. I was at the public school in 6th grade.
Well, and when she says she's late, I had a program that I was running at a school called Road to Excellence that was a full immersion academic support program for students with identified learning difficulties. And it was a pull-out period in which I worked with a select group of kids handling their curriculum. They were responsible for the exact same curriculum that all the other students were. But I would pull them out once a day and just give them whatever sort of specific support they needed. And Chloe, I guess, joined us in 7th grade then.
Yeah, but everyone forgets that. Like whenever I talk to anyone in our group, they always forget that I joined. Like they just assume I was there the whole time. And they'll talk about stories that I'm like, I don't remember that. Well, that must have happened before my time.
Well, that's a compliment, though. You immediately, and this is really a truth. This is valid. You became a member of that little family very quickly, an integral member. So they just assumed, like I did, that you were there from the beginning. You were a gifted kid, and
yeah, it happens a lot with me. Like my roommate I met in sometime in college, and I got my time capsule from high school. And she was like, "Why didn't you ask me to write a letter?" I'm like, "Well, I would have had to ask you to travel to the past, or you know, like."
Oh, I didn't.
Traveling for that to work. I didn't know you then. She's like, "Oh yeah, we didn't know each other then."
Usually that doesn't happen until old age. Chloe, your audio cut out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're back. So, would you like to talk about those years? Would you like to talk about?
Yeah, we can talk about the middle school.
Whatever you'd like. Whatever you'd like. This program was set up, as I said, to deal with anyone who had any sort of identified learning difficulty, not just those children who were identified as having autism.
Yeah, I wasn't diagnosed at the time.
Say that again?
I wasn't diagnosed with autism at the time.
That's right. That's right. That didn't come until disturbingly later that you finally went on that road of self-discovery.
Yeah.
Which we were all very proud of. But I guess that's an excellent illustration of the point I was going to make, that early on in my career, the diagnosis and the recommendations of the diagnoser were very important to my practice. And eventually I came to the conclusion that that wasn't the case. And the diagnosis and even the recommendations were helpful, but they were not the guidelines by which I taught these kids or taught you. The diagnosis didn't make that much difference to me. I had the luxury of being able to tailor make my approach to each and every student. And it was just a process of learning what the individual students' learning needs were and adjusting the approach to that particular student. And I was able to do that for you with your help and for all of those students. And if there was any success to the program, because you had a lot of diagnoses in that program, you know, every kid came with their own stuff, and you just learn what that stuff is and make the necessary accommodations.
Yeah, I think at the time I was misdiagnosed with ADD, OCD.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely know now I am with selective mute, where I didn't know that term then. So I was just, everyone's like, "Oh, she's shy and quiet." And I was like, I don't know why, I just don't feel like those things describe me. But I couldn't like explain it because like I wasn't afraid to talk. You know, I wasn't afraid of judgment and all that kind of, as you know. So shy didn't make sense, and like I was like, I guess I'm quiet. I only speak when I feel like I have something to say.
Exactly. Well, you know, it was lucky that you came to me, because I think you had been largely misunderstood as a student for most of your schooling up until that point. Not only misdiagnosed, but misunderstood. You shared the story with me about being scolded.
Oh yeah.
I thought of that story for a week.
It's a good one, right?
Yeah, well, it's very illustrative. You, even then, you did not suffer fools well, shall we say. And so many of your previous educators, I thought, misunderstood you and kind of tried to compartmentalize you and scolded you when you didn't adhere to their approach. And you didn't see the sense of
it. Nicer than this lady, but but
well,
yeah, I got in trouble a lot, not to the extent of like that. If you don't know that story, I'm pretty sure I've told it on here before. It's like one of my favorite stories to tell when people are like, oh, what did you get in trouble for in school? And I think that is really one of the only times I got in trouble and that much trouble. I was in first grade and I filled out my reading packet early, and yeah, I was pulled outside and a call went home to my parents, like the whole thing.
And you were mystified, right? You found the whole thing not only maybe a little bit hurtful, but mostly perplexing.
Yeah, I was so confused because she said this is not the time, like you're supposed to fill out the packet, and I was like, I didn't know there was a time for that. I was like so confused. Yeah, it's a lot of school rules were very baffling to me. I remember like the entire grade being benched for something that someone did. They just didn't know who. Stuff like that. And I was like, that was yesterday. Why am I benched? Clearly it wasn't me.
Sounds Orwellian. That's scary.
Yeah, we got Crocs, I remember, were banned because one girl broke her legs while wearing Crocs, and then I somehow managed to find out who that was, and she was like, I don't know why they blamed it on my Crocs because I really fell off the monkey bars. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes zero sense.
Bureaucracy. Well, that's still happening today, unfortunately. But, I think the history of your schooling, Chloe, was largely episodes of being misunderstood. And that's kind of at the crux. I learned very early on that you had a very different view of the world, and a good educator adjusts their teaching to the student's view of the world. And it is incumbent upon a good educator to find out about that view and that perspective and teach to that perspective, as opposed to forcing you into their own. And I think you responded real well to that. You were a superb student.
Yeah, I still remember coming home with my first test from having switched schools. And even just like being in your class, I think it was maybe a week, maybe less than a week, I went from failing grades to an A. I got an A on this test. And it was a science test, which was a class that I was never, really good at. And like it was like I realized that I hadn't thought of myself as smart because I had been letting the grade system tell me what my intellect was.
Bingo. Exactly.
And I felt smart for the first time, and I was like, I didn't, it was one of those first times that I felt like, there's more possibility out there than I thought there was for me, and it was like such a big moment with my parents when I brought it home to, because it was like I hated sharing my tests, and so then they were like, "How did the test go?" It was like I just showed it to them, I used to hide my test and be like, "Oh, I lost it," or that kind of stuff.
I fed it to a dog.
Yeah, well, the reason I did it also was because I didn't want to add another problem to their plate, because I don't know if you remember, at the time Lillian was just being diagnosed with Crohn's.
Right. She had a lot of health concerns.
In and out of the hospital. Like literally we thought she was, dying of something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, this is not as big of a problem as that, you know, and I don't need to add that to their stuff. That was why I actually hit it, where like, I don't understand that I'm going to get in trouble. Like, they knew how much I studied and stuff. I just didn't want them to worry about that when they had all this other stuff going on that was much bigger. That's why I did it.
Well, and you were right. That was a logical approach to it.
Yeah.
They had their hands full with other stuff. And it seems to me back then there was even talk of Lillian joining the program, but I don't really remember the details.
She was in Renaissance. And at the time she made a connection with her teacher, Miss Johnson. And it was just similar thing with her, where she was really misunderstood, but like teachers didn't like her, where teachers at least like they liked me. Where she like couldn't keep her mouth shut about like, that's wrong, that doesn't make sense, that's stupid, you know. She said all that kind of stuff to them, and then they didn't like that.
Yeah, no. Authority rarely does.
And so with Miss Johnson, she like got excited about students who did that kind of stuff. And you know, it was like, wow, it is stupid, but this is what we're learning. You know, like she validated the lane for the first time. So I saw like,
well said.
Lillian's excitement for school again. She loves learning. Like, she doesn't need school to learn. Like, she taught me all about sex ed in like 3rd grade.
But that's a subject for another evening.
You know, she's like, I call her like a little scientist. And now that I watch Star Trek, she's Spock 100%. Like, she like learns something, questions it, and then she experiments with it. And so like she asked where babies came from, and she's like, no, that doesn't make sense. So she went and looked it up. And we didn't have laptops then. We didn't have, you know, so she went to the library, the school library. And
did she really?
Yes, she found it in the school library with the school librarian. They looked it up together, and like, then she came to me and told me all about it. And I was like, I didn't need to hear this.
I love your analogy. She is very much Mr. Spock.
Yeah. I saw that show and went, that's Lillian. That's my sister. There's never been a person more like her. It's so good.
Yeah, that fits.
They nailed her.
Well, I had never heard that story, but
yeah,
you have much of those characteristics as well. You know, it's ironic that you didn't do well in school sometimes, because you were always of a very curious nature.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was just finding the parts of your education about which you were curious and zeroing in on those. You were a voracious reader. And so I used your love of reading to get you engaged in English as a whole. And that wasn't hard to do. You know, you were a excellent student waiting to surface.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of the work you've been doing too, obviously. You know, I just got to see you last week sometime, and as I was driving away, I realized that I kind of failed to tell you exactly how proud of you I am, the young woman you've become, and the spectacular and important work you're doing in this area, in this field. It's very admirable, Chloe. So I hope you're proud of yourself too.
I am. It's crazy to think back to that time, especially with like the time capsules, thinking about like where I was in my school years and where I am now is like, it's unfathomable. I'm like, if I like were that person, I couldn't even imagine all the stuff I'm doing now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask, can I ask you something? Go back. Speaking of time, guys, let's travel back in time. What was your happiest time as a student? When were you the happiest?
Like at school?
Yeah, at school.
Or just like at that age?
Well, both, but I mean, like, if you look at sixth grade, let's say, was sixth grade a happy time? Was eighth grade a happy time? Was your senior year a happy time? When were you a really happy student?
I don't know if I was a happy student in necessarily the classroom, but I was always interested in learning. I loved spending weekends with my grandparents. They always told me all about history. My grandma used to come into the classroom. We have ancestors from the Mayflower, and she used to be a preschool and elementary school teacher, and has always been understanding of kids that learn differently. And so when she taught her lessons, she like threw down like a pillow on the floor and went, everyone jump off the Mayflower onto Plymouth Rock. And like everyone had to step on the rock. And like, you know, and like that's how she taught. She had all these like toys from that time. Like there's like the rope toy with like a little ball on it, you know, to like pull the rope to spin it.
Oh yeah, yeah, I remember those.
She brought those to the classroom. Like I grew up playing with all that stuff, and she taught me all about, you know, different types of stuff, and that was always so fun for me. And then I was like, I couldn't wait for school to be like that, and it was not like that.
Yeah, right. Why not?
And like all those stories that she taught me, I remember them. But like where like I take a test and like all that stuff's just gone because there's just like memorization, or hers are like stories and like who got like involved in it. And so like she took me to museums and stuff like that. I remember like stuff like the Prague trip, or like where I went with my best friend at the time, Alex. I think that's really how we became best friends, to Prague one summer for like 3 weeks with a couple history teachers, Mr. Cho and
I remember him.
yeah, and that was like such a cool experience because we got to like be in those places. I loved outdoor ed. I loved it. Everyone hated it, but I loved it because it was just like learning while experiencing stuff. And for some reason, everyone was nicer on those trips. There wasn't like as much drama as like it was in the competitive classroom settings. And I don't know if it's like if nature had to do with it, or like you just knowing you have to deal with these people for 3 weeks, can't get away from them, that you're just nicer. But I felt like everyone was just and genuine about it, not fake, and really helped each other to learn and to experience things, and to, you know, if someone were having a rough time, like we supported each other. Where I felt like a lot of times in the classrooms, like if someone got a wrong answer, like we laughed at them, or, you know, like put them down. But like on those sort of experience and trips, we like that never happened. So I liked those sort of things. That way of learning. And I was always talking like with friends at lunch about different homework assignments or about stuff I learned. And I remember even getting in trouble in like ASP because I was talking too much, and I was having too much fun, so I couldn't possibly be talking about the homework when we were, you know, just I was like a fan of learning. I just didn't like the classroom setting of it. It just didn't feel natural and safe, and I didn't like the competitiveness and then needing to get points like it was a sports game.
You know what, everything you've just said is actually quite profound. Yes, you did respond to outdoor ed. Yes, you did respond to you know, any learning context that wasn't sitting in a classroom with a bunch of peers and having to abide by, you know, a certain code. It's not that you were throwing erasers and, you know, pulling people's hair and stuff. You just you wanted to learn outside of a typical context. That's how you learn best. You used the word competition a couple times. Yeah. I don't think you ever saw the sense in that approach, you know, raising hands and hoping to be picked over the person next to you, or who knows this and who doesn't know this. And it didn't make sense to me.
In so many classrooms to prepare for a test, I'm like, why are we competing for points? Like, I hated that. Those
Good.
games.
You did. But the real point, and the reason what everything you just said is particularly touching to me, is once you got out of that environment, those you know, contrived learning situations, you prospered. You absolutely blossomed when you could, as you say, at lunchtime or up in the mountains or sitting on a pillow pretending it's the Mayflower, or then you're learning knew no bounds. You absolutely blossomed. And you did well in the classroom too. It's just that that's not, you didn't prosper there as much as when we could get you out of that environment.
Yeah.
That's an important lesson for every educator. If there's someone not being reached by sitting at a desk for 50 minutes a day, try something else. It's not hard.
Now, knowing what I know about learning, one of the basic things in order to learn is you have to feel safe in order to retain knowledge and absorb knowledge. And if you talk to any middle schooler, they don't feel safe at school.
It's not a safe time. Yeah, well, and that also is quite deep, because that's something also very important to keep in mind when dealing with adolescence. Adolescence sucks, and you can't ignore that part of the equation, that 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds have so much stuff going on in their heads and their spirits that are of an absolute priority to them, that a teacher sitting in front of the class and lecturing, the history of the American Revolution is very interesting to that teacher, but what a peer said to you at lunchtime is probably crowding that out and is much more massive to a 12-year-old than is any curriculum. It's tough to be an adolescent, and that has to be part of the equation in dealing with them.
So I don't know if you've heard my coming out story, but I realized very recently that I'm asexual. And so I remember in some of your classes that I missed some sexual jokes, and I was labeled innocent. I was not innocent. I knew all about sex, but I didn't get the references because I'm asexual. And so that was really confusing, because middle schools are very sexual, and they are exploring that and talking about it a lot. And I didn't understand any of that. And I remember coming to you with a lot of questions about, I don't understand this, and what does this mean when they said that? And I'm like,
you did?
Yeah.
And, again, learning your perspective of the world as I did, I understood you were coming. I have a specific story. The guy in Great Britain, Mark, I spoke to him about this particular story, so I'm going to repeat it real quick. You came, and I'll try to, I'll keep in mind this is a public space, and be careful with the language, but you came to me very confused, I think probably in 8th grade, because you had been picked on by a boy who was, let's say, was teasing you in a sexual context. Let's keep it at that, using words and so forth. And you as a matter of factly, sought me out in my room, sat down next to me and said, what did he mean when he said this? And what did he mean when he said that? And I explained it to you, and you were like, your response was very, it wasn't to start sobbing and throw yourself on the floor or become embarrassed, or it was just like, why are those things important to it? Why is he using those words? What does that have to do with anything? So you being asexual, as you're putting it now, that makes sense to the Chloe I knew even back then.
Yeah.
It seemed very strange to you that anyone, particularly someone trying to bully you, would be so obsessed with something that was utterly unimportant to you.
Yeah, it when they talked about guys think about sex more than girls, I'm like, well, I hope so, because I never think about it. It's just like there were some things that I thought that my squishes, which are friendship crushes, were crushes. And they weren't. So like I remember like everyone saying I had a crush on like one of my first friends that was a guy, and I was like, I don't think so. But then like it started to put like weird images in my head that I like definitely wasn't ready for, especially as an asexual, and that sadly ended our friendship. And where like
when,
it
when
kind
was that? How old were you?
actually be couples, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
That wasn't in one of your goals. I get it.
But I found like guys were really comfortable talking to me about things and asking questions to me about things that were girl related that they were afraid to ask other people about. And I would like honestly answer it with no judgment. And it was just like a confusing time for everybody.
It is a confusing time for everyone, and especially somebody like you to whom it was, shall we say, a low priority. But that's also why when your peers seemed to be obsessed with the subject, that was perplexing to you. You just didn't get it.
So confusing. So yeah. I just, I wasn't insulted by anyone. I was just super confused.
No, you weren't. Yeah. I was in my caretaker mode. And I'm, again, going back to that specific anecdote, I was ready to have you be terribly hurt by the things he said. But I'm repeating myself. Once I explained them to you were like, huh, that's stupid. And I said, yes, it is, Chloe. I'll see you later. Yeah. Once again, your different perspective, you turned it into a strength.
Yeah.
How old were you when that crush, quote unquote, happened, when everyone assumed you'd be getting together with that boy?
I want to say 8th grade. Yeah, I Lillian always had guy friends, but I didn't really till middle school. And like I remember asking guys to dances as friends, and now I realize they thought I was asking them out, and that's why they turned me down. And I got some really horrible rejections too, actually. But like,
would you say that again? You had some horrible what?
Some horrible rejections. Like people were mean. Like
really?
Yeah.
That's horrible. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, that should never happen in polite society.
I also sure you had one of my guy friends was telling all the guys that I wasn't interested in dating because I have never dated before, and I was like, that's a weird reasoning that you had there, and also we had never discussed that before.
A little presumptuous.
So I was like, that kind of makes sense. Like some of my stories, looking back, I'm like, okay.
Well, I've got another one for you, Chloe.
Guys didn't ask girls out. That's what I thought was happening.
Poor thing. No, but again, I say poor thing, but I'm sorry to hear that some of the rejections were harsh. But that stuff, that wasn't a priority to you. So I don't see that as changing your foundation.
Friends, and I didn't realize people were asking each other out because they liked each other. I was like, I just want to go dance with my friend.
I have another story that I haven't thought of in years and years, Chloe. There was a boy in your class, my class, with you. We won't use names. Let's just say he was very tall. And I know you'll remember who I'm talking about. And I was sitting around with all of your parents, some meeting. And it was brought up how all the girls in class had a crush on that one boy. And some of the parents are actually worried about it. Well, so-and-so comes home with stories and they're all competing for his attention. And I'm listening to all of this. And I remember I said, and I remember your mother laughing at this. I said, well, that may be true, but I don't think it's really true with Chloe. The only crush she has is Goofy. Yeah. I meant it. And that was the only time I ever saw you showing that kind of behavior was with Goofy.
Yeah, a lot of my guy friends have been really tall, lanky, nerdy guys that like,
very goofy-esque.
Like silly, and like I like now realize like they were comfortable around me because I didn't comment on their height. I didn't comment on, like, a lot of people were scared of them, and like I just saw their personality and was like, there's nothing scary about them. And so they like to hang around me, and there was never like a wanting to date them, and they felt comfortable with that because like so many girls go after like the taller guys just to date them and not to be their friend, and so there was like a comfort that happened. Like I had a couple of friends in college that were really tall, and it was just like really comfortable hanging out with them. So like it like has been a thing, and so like my dad used to joke that like Goofy is my type, like, because I surrounded myself with like people like him.
Can I interrupt? Is your audience aware with your preoccupation with Goofy?
I think I've talked about it a little bit. I mean, I
Chloe
think
loves the character Goofy.
That's what you're does say that I'm still engaged to him.
Are you? Congratulations.
We proposed to each other back and forth a lot over the years.
That's how I won your heart, because I got you like Goofy paraphernalia.
Yeah. I remember you made some sort of joke about drawing him so many times, like an absurd number of times, and I took that as a challenge.
Oh, I do remember that.
And like,
and it was on a board.
I counted them all and kept a tally on the whiteboard.
Yeah, I do remember that. Oh my gosh, I haven't thought of that in years. Hence the misdiagnosis of OCD, perhaps.
Yeah.
You filled that room with Goofy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I found all of those attributes of yours charming.
Yeah, this story goes, I was really little, like 2 or 3 at Disneyland. And this was when like the characters ran around and like did stuff with you, and you didn't like wait in line to hang out with them. And I was like afraid of all the characters.
Were you?
And Goofy comes running out and does like, there was like some songs playing to dance, and I just like ran up to him and hugged him, and we danced to the Macarena, and then we've been together ever since.
The rest is history. I don't think I ever heard that story.
Yeah.
How old were you?
I was like 2 or 3. I was like really, really little.
That's a great story.
Well, I don't even remember it, but my parents used to tell this story, and I just, when I watched films, it was always like the characters that made me laugh that I was always found to be my favorite, and he just really made me laugh, and he was just so sweet and everything.
What do they call that? A cute meat?
Yeah, a meet cute.
You said something that I found interesting, though. You said back then, even as a little girl, that you were scared of a lot of the other characters. And that's interesting to me, because I don't see you being scared of too much, either growing up or now. That was always a misperception of you that people often had. Yeah. I had so many of my colleagues always say, "Oh, Chloe's so timid. She's so scared. She's so," and I'm like, "No, she's not. She'll talk when she has something to tell you."
Yeah, as soon as someone makes me feel comfortable, it's like nonstop talking, especially like in one-on-one settings. And now that I can express that, like definitely with my professors in college, they like I would stay after class or like going to talk with them in their office, and or send them emails and stuff, and there's just like endless conversations we had where like in that group setting, you're just like there's just too much to process that I don't have time to keep up. So, but when that like adjustment is made for me. It's just so much easier to learn, and
Exactly.
so I find it easier to talk like one-on-one with people than at parties. So the group settings are really tough for me, and so I'm often told I'm quiet or shy or that kind of stuff in party settings. Like, yeah, I just have a harder time in those settings. But when I'm in a more comfortable setting for me, I'm not quiet or shy at all.
That makes perfect sense to me. And no, you're not. And even in the group settings make less sense to you because you're not connecting with anyone specifically. You're supposed to put on a whole different persona, your party persona, your group persona, and you don't see the same thing.
I hate small talk, talking about the weather. I'll just tune out.
Yeah. Small talk. You've never been one for small talk.
Living in New York, my family would call, like, I heard it's snowing. I'm like, hang up on them.
Like,
I don't want to talk about the weather.
I'll tell you about the weather, we promise. Well, and that's also, I'm sorry to keep hearkening back to your childhood, but that's, Chloe that I worked with. That makes perfect sense too. In the group settings, you weren't ill at ease, you weren't intimidated, but it just made less sense to you.
I didn't know what to do. Oh my God. Yeah. I remember we'd be at a party and all of a sudden everyone gets up together and moves to another location. I'm just sitting there like, what happened?
How did that happen?
Ask people, like, why did you get up and move out here? Oh, it was like, I guess it was kind of awkward over there. Like, when did that happen?
And why? What do you mean awkward? Yeah, I totally get that. What are the rules to this situation? Someone needs to explain them to me.
And I remember I had this friend who had a cochlear implant, and she didn't want anyone to know. And we did pool parties, and she always got in the pool, and people would try to talk to her, but she had taken it out. And so she's like, everyone's like, why is she being so rude? I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, is she different? Now, is that the student that I had? Your peer with the, yeah.
So, well, I was with her at parties. So I can't imagine what people thought.
Boy, is she rude. She was just talking to me inside.
Yeah.
Well, she was funny about that. Yeah.
She wouldn't tell certain teachers, and so she'd ask something, and they're like, I already said that. I'm like, do you not know that if like you were looking away from her?
Yeah. That was her particular cross to bear.
Yeah, and I have a couple friends that were hard of hearing or completely deaf. I had a friend who was deaf, and then she got these tubes in her ears when she was older. But like, she was in musicals and could sing, and I never understood any of that.
That's cool.
But she'd come over. She was friends with Lillian, and she'd come over, and my mom always forgot and would be calling her when she was facing away. I'm like, Mom, stop. Go over and tap her shoulder. Like,
yeah. Well, and you know what? To broaden that story again, that's again, you kind of forget that you've got to approach a young person from their world, not from your world. I did the same thing with that girl, your friend. Often I would forget and do the same thing your mom did. But then my favorite story with her is when I had to take her out. Do you remember this one? I had to take her outside to scold her about something, and she just got up and ran away.
She did that a lot.
She did. I literally found myself chasing her. You can't run away.
You hated your high fives.
Oh yeah, they hurt.
But I heard grades because she didn't want you to see that you got an A because she didn't want a high five. She would get a test and look at me like, don't tell Mr. Walsh, don't tell Mr. Walsh.
I've been told that that's very passive aggressive. My high fives for your audience are very they're quite a slap. One of my trademarks, and perhaps borderline abusive.
Oh my God, I remember that. Yeah, and so we have some questions, so I'm gonna go over those. Thomas asked, any advice for college? Well, for me, like, I wish people talked more about the alternatives to college, because there are so many.
Especially now.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as college, I wish that what I had done is gotten a degree or gone to, a college and just done the general ed. And then from there decided on a major and where I wanted to go. Because or gone to art school or trade school specifically for film, because that was ended up being the major that I wanted, because it was like, so it's tricky to transfer those credits. And I know so many people who transfer schools or transfer majors. And so, but if you have your GE out of the way, that's like a lot easier to deal with, rather than losing a bunch of credits. So I would say, like, definitely look into that, so that once you're in your major, you can just focus on your major, because like that's all I wanted to do. I like hated the GE classes. So if I had like just freshman and sophomore year just done the GE first and then did major classes, but for some reason it's not set up that way, and they're like, this is our first year major classes, and then like there's like during like junior and senior year, some people like run out of major classes to take, and we're like, that's doing it backwards. So yeah, that would be my recommendation, especially because if you have a special interest you're doing, like you don't want to, because then I like just wanted to do my film classes and never wanted to do the work for the other classes. That would be what I recommend to do. I should have just gone to trade school, but everyone said, oh, you need the college experience. And then I went to college and I had the college experience and I hated it. So I don't understand. What is
the college experience?
I didn't like that part of college. I didn't like part of college. I just liked the film.
I understand that. I mean, the whole concept of college is so askew now. I have so many college students who are paying tens of thousands of dollars to take classes, online in their dorm room. And
oh my God, you definitely underestimated that number. But and I even went to like different colleges from the norm, I guess. I went to a college that did studio classes. My first college. So for the studio classes, they were 5 hours long.
Wow.
Which sounds awful, but they're actually really amazing, because we did like the normal lecture thing for like the first part, and then we went and practiced what we learned with the professor, and then we critiqued what we learned. So they were learning about using microphones for film. So you do the lecture here and you point the device this way, and we do that whole lecture, and then you actually get to touch a microphone, and the teacher's there or the professor's there to help you figure it out. And then you come back and you watch what you made, and then there's the critique of like, oh, did it work? Did it not work? And then you go home for homework and you have to do it by yourself, where most classroom learning, I've learned that in film, they don't even touch any equipment till like junior or senior year, which is crazy. That like the first time you might be touching equipment is for your thesis. So luckily I was in that environment. And then I switched to a school where I was told you get to interview your professors, and then based on that you get to pick classes. But it felt more like the professor was interviewing me. And I was like, I was told I get a pick, not that you get a pick. who's in your class. No, well, I'm the most, everyone said, all the professors were like, I'm the most popular one. So there's a lot of people who I have to pick. I'm like, this is not what I was told it was going to be. So that was really frustrating.
Well, the only truism about college that I could add is that it is what you make of it.
Yeah.
Don't believe all of the hype. It's actually, the construct of college is one of the most arbitrary and ultimately nonsensical parts of the American educational system. But good can come of the experience if you just go in saying, I am going to absorb what I want to absorb and experience what I want to experience, and the rest is nonsense and unimportant to me.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I was very active about like changing things if it was frustrating. Like, I remember I took an acting class because I wanted to learn about directing actors, and there wasn't a directing one, so I was like, I talked to the professor. I'm like, can I take your acting class and learn about it from, a directing point of view? And then I was in that class for an entire semester, and we didn't do one scene. And I was like, so I went to like my class, and I was like, I'm gonna talk to the head of this department if anyone wants to come with me about what's going on, because the professor is not listening to me about doing scenes. And I'm not getting what I want out of it. And I know you guys as actors are probably really frustrated. And they're all like, nah, it's fine. I was like, okay.
It is?
I found that to be the case a lot of the time, where I would be going and they're like, oh, Chloe's always complaining about something, because I was always the one speaking up and no one else, said anything and just went along with it. And I was like, okay, I guess we have to deal with this.
Well, on the other hand, thank God that that you did speak up, that you were that force in the class. Mm-hmm. Listen, Chloe, unfortunately, I've got an 8 o'clock student, so I'm going to have to sign off.
Okay.
Thank you, though. And I'm sorry that you went to such trouble to do it this way instead of the way you're accustomed to.
Well, now I know this is an option.
So. This is an option, yeah. Thank you, Chloe. Sorry, I've got to run. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so that was Adam Walsh. He was my middle school teacher. If you guys missed that, he's an educational therapist. He's pretty cool person. Yeah, so he knew me before my diagnosis. I was diagnosed at 16, and he knew me in middle school and helped me learn how to learn with people. I've done a live stream with him in the past if you want to see more from him. I think it's called RTE, Road to Excellence. So if you want to go to Artism Facebook page, click on videos and scroll through, you'll find us speaking. And here's like at the very beginning of when I did my live stream. Thank you guys for joining. You guys have been a really cool audience and everything. Thank you for your questions. Check out artism.com for all the cool stuff that we have available. If you missed the project I am working on, I talked with some therapists today, and we are making a video that's going to be available in a private group that has a bunch of experts that have to do with autism, talking about autism. So please reach out to me if you want that information. I think I shared it on Instagram. I'll share it on Facebook when I have time. And yeah, join the support group. You click on artism.com, go to the calendar. You can register for a support group for game night that's happening this week. Yeah. Come back next week. I do Starlight Talks every Wednesday, 7 Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, stay colorful. Bye.